Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, the Executive Director of the American Constitutional Rights Union and ACRU Action Fund, and welcome to another episode of Live Free TV. Coming to you from a hotel room here in Durham, North Carolina, where I'm about to speak to the students at Duke University this evening. But without a doubt, what's dominating the news cycle? We're 2 weeks away from an incredible election cycle. But what do you hear most of the progressive socialist left talking about? It's all about Trump's cabinet picks. And when I look at this, first and foremost, a president, an elected president, can pick anybody that he wants. If he wants to pick a skunk, he can pick a skunk. The skunk has to pass the nomination process. But of course, now the Senate is controlled by Republicans from the president's own party. So you would think that he would have an ease of being able to get these selections nominated and then getting them passed so he can get the business that the American people want. But when I think about this ranting, this raving, this incredible apoplectic meltdown from the left about Trump's cabinet picks, well, first and foremost, I think that the left has failed to really go back and look at what happened 2 weeks ago. Why are they in the position that Donald Trump had this incredible landslide victory where we saw a 48 out of 50 states trend toward the right? We saw even a state like New Jersey only being lost by Donald Trump by 5 percentage points. When you look at that 2024 presidential electoral map by county, you see red all over the place. And there's very defined places where you see that blue, and it focuses on major urban population centers. Well, of course, you see the greatest amount of failure of the policies of the left, definitely the policies of the Biden-Harris administration. But when you look at the folks that Joe Biden selected to be in his administration, let's not forget Alejandro Mayorkas, the guy who was in charge of our homeland security, that stood up there and incessantly told us that the border was secure, and to not believe our lying eyes, to include my own eyes that have been down to the border countless amounts of times and seen individuals just coming across, and they still seek to come across. 1.5 to 2 million gotaways, people that we know came across. We don't know where they are. We lost track. 425,000 criminal illegal immigrants in the United States of America right now. And the left is upset, talking about removing these individuals to include 30,000 rapists and murderers, to include 25 to 30,000 single military age male Chinese. I mean, right now you've got a murder trial going on for the murder of Laken Riley, a woman who was killed by a member of the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, who came across the border illegally. And we flew him through the United States of America to New York. Then he ends up down in Georgia, taxpayer benefits, and he goes out, predatory nature, and finds a young woman, a nursing student at the University of Georgia, and kills her. Jocelyn Nungare, 12-year-old girl down in Houston, Texas. Once again, Venezuelan Tren de Aragua members kill her, brutally rape her, leave her down by one of the bayous under a bridge. But that cabinet selection was okay. Mayor Pete from South Bend, Indiana, being in charge of the entire transportation infrastructure system here in the United States of America. I can talk about countless failures that we saw from him during his tenure. Or let's look at the Department of Justice and how this most recent faux pas, the Department of Justice, where they brought a lawsuit against a sovereign state, the state of Virginia, who wanted to remove non-citizens, identified known non-citizens off his voter registration rolls. And the left is getting upset about these selections that Donald Trump is making. Now, some of them are a bit of a head scratcher, but that's fine. But I don't think that anyone that Donald Trump has selected to this point would purposefully and intentionally undermine the rule of law in the United States of America. I mean, the energy secretary, she had no background in energy, Jennifer Grantham. I think the commerce secretary, Gina Raimondo, I believe she was the former governor of New Jersey. She did not even know that the department, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, had downgraded 818,000 jobs. They were non-existent. The administration just created them out of thin air. She did not even know that the Bureau of Labor Statistics did that. And she's in the Department of Commerce. Lloyd Austin, who is our Secretary of Defense. Now, I served with Lloyd Austin here in this state, in North Carolina, down at Fort Bragg, and it'll always be Fort Bragg. But here's a Secretary of Defense that oversaw such silliness as changing installation names. And oh, by the way, we have not met our recruiting and retention standards since Lloyd Austin has been the Secretary of Defense. But the people in the United States military know their pronouns very well. They know about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't know about their warfighting capabilities and capacities. Or how about the fact that 13 brave men and women of our military, 11 Marines, a soldier and a sailor, needlessly lose their lives in Afghanistan, yet no one is held accountable whatsoever, be it the Secretary of Defense or National Security Advisor, anyone in that administration, and to include uniform members. They fired drones and killed a civilian, an Afghan civilian, an aid worker and his family. No one's held accountable. The debacle that we know as the withdrawal from Afghanistan, no one is held accountable. But yet now, all of a sudden, we have these people that went along with that administration and all the members of the administration who for quite some time did not have a cabinet meeting, who continuously told us that Joe Biden's just perfectly okay. He is the sharpest person there. He challenges me every time I see him. They lied to us about his cognitive ability. But now all of a sudden, everyone is upset about who Donald Trump is picking in his cabinet. So let's first take a look at the people that Donald Trump, that we know right now, has selected in his cabinet. And let's just go through some of them. Okay, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's Senator Marco Rubio from the state of Florida. Very astute young man. He knows very, very well the foreign policies and foreign affairs because he sits on that committee in the Senate. Pete Hegseth, he is a combat veteran in the United States Army. He was a member of the Minnesota National Guard. And if you want to say anything about Pete Hegseth, at least as a member of the Minnesota National Guard, when his country called for him to go and deploy, he went and deployed, unlike Tim Walz. Now, you can scratch your head about the fact that whether or not he's been in the Pentagon, whether or not he has that experience. But I think that what President Trump is trying to say, I don't need the people that come from inside the bubble. I don't need the people that are part of that defense military industrial complex. I want to have some outsiders. And I think that in the first administration, President Trump was really enamored with these people called generals. But now I think he's seeing that, those worker bee level people, majors, lieutenant colonels, colonels, or in the maritime services, you would call them lieutenant commanders and commanders and captains in the Navy. I think that those folks are pretty knowledgeable as well. Now, Attorney General Matt Gaetz, that's one of those head scratchers. There are a lot of great attorney generals out there at the state level that, I would have thought had been selected. But again, this is a choice that the president can make on his own, and he can continue on with them. And let's see if he can make it through the confirmation. Secretary of Interior, you have the former governor there of North Dakota, Doug Burgum, a great person to have. And I think one of the things that you're seeing is perhaps as we go through this whole thing about government efficiency and government agencies that should probably be eliminated, maybe some of those things that fell under the Department of Energy, which was just created back during the Carter administration, maybe as you eliminate that agency, you bring some of those duties and responsibilities under the Secretary of Interior, because Doug Burgum is very well knowledgeable and astute on energy policy. Let's go back and look at some of the others. Health and Human Services. Now, I will tell you that one of the things we need to look at, back during the Carter administration, we had what was called HEW, Health, Education, Welfare. We split them out and created 3 new agencies, Health, Human Services, Education, and HUD. I think that there's going to be a relooking of that, and maybe you can look at the Department of Education going away, but without a doubt, we got to make sure that we keep Americans healthy. And I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., if he stays focused on getting Americans healthy once again and stop allowing us to be controlled by Big Pharma. One of the things we don't do, we don't have a proactive system. We still are out there treating sickness instead of preventing sickness. And I think that when you look at better food quality, exercise, and rewarding people for doing those right things, I think that you'll see a lot less health issues in the United States of America. Not to say that our bodies aren't flawed and we will have sickness, but I think that that focus for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. there in Health and Human Services is important. Now, we know that Sean Duffy, former member of Congress, just got nominated to be the Secretary of Transportation. I think he'll do a much better job than Mr. Buttigieg. And Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, I know her very well. We came into Congress together. You know, I would have thought that maybe she would go to Interior, being from South Dakota, but let's see how she does things. But she's got a war horse in Tom Homan, which is not in a cabinet position, but I think that he will definitely help her in Homeland Security. And then former colleague Doug Collins out of the state of Georgia, House of Representatives member, a veteran. He'll be heading up Veterans Affairs. So I think you got some solid people there with the right type of background that can do very good at these positions. But most importantly, they're going to look at it from an outsider perspective, not a DC perspective. Now let's go over and look at some of these other key positions out there. We talked about the Department of Government Efficiency. You got Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. It's about time that we had the private sector take a look at the public sector, because it's the private sector, American citizens, that are really the ones that are giving their resources over to the public sector to exist. So shouldn't we want to have effective and efficient government? Because so often we have had a public sector that looks down at the private sector and say, oh, no, this is what you must pay people. Oh, no, you're essential. You're not essential. You have to shut down. You don't have to shut down. I think it's time that that page got flipped and we start to look and have people from the outside at the public sector say, since you're using our taxpayer dollars to exist, we want to make sure that you exist based upon the Constitution. And we get this thing, the behemoth, the Leviathan that we have created, the federal government, back into the box called the Constitution of the United States of America. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in another episode on this Live Free TV about Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which defines the enumerated powers of the federal government. Let's talk about the Environmental Protection Agency. Lee Zeldin, he's a lawyer. He is a former member of Congress, ran for governor of New York. And I think, again, here's someone who's going to come in and not have the insider perspective, but he is going to look and say, what makes sense for the EPA? The EPA should not be out there declaring that a puddle of water on your land is now all of a sudden a water source, and we have to come in and regulate it. And some of the other rules that I've seen about dust and all of this that's adversely affect our farmers. We got to decrease the rules and regulations out there. And we all want clean water. There's no doubt about it. We want clean air, but we need to have common sense policies at the Environmental Protection Agency, not policies that are based upon an ideological agenda like this whole Green New Deal thing. Let's look at some of the others. Elise Stefanik going in as the ambassador to the United Nations. Now, there's some people who say it's probably time that we withdraw ourselves from the United Nations, which is just a collection of autocrats, theocrats, dictators, and just basically nutcases. But if we're going to have someone in that position to represent the United States of America, let's have someone strong. Let's have someone tough. Let's have someone that can carry President Trump's message. And I think that anybody that can get two Ivy League professors to step down, they're okay. And I think that Elise Stefanik, former member of Congress, will do a very good job. Let's look and see the CIA, John Ratcliffe, former director of national intelligence. Great choice. He has that background. The director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, I think that's going to be a big lift for her because she doesn't have that background in the intel. And we just want to make sure that she understands how to bring together all of these, 16, 17 different intelligence agencies. But then again, that comes back to the government efficiency department. Maybe we can reduce the amount of intel agencies that we have out there so they're not stacked upon each other and layer upon layer. And without a doubt, when you go back and you look what happened 4 years ago when you had those 51 intelligence experts that wrote that letter about the Russian misinformation and disinformation with Hunter Biden's laptop, we got something that needs to be kind of uprooted out of our intelligence agencies and community. And I think that Tulsi Gabbard, I think she will be able to do a pretty good job of that. But it's going to be, again, a high bar for her to get there. Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, a guy that I know very well. currently a member of Congress out of the state of Florida. Mike Waltz and I were just airborne buddies, and we jumped into Normandy for the 80th anniversary this past June. But the great thing about Mike Waltz is that he has an experience and an understanding at all levels of warfare and security. That's the strategic, the operational, and the tactical. Former Lieutenant Colonel, Green Beret, United States Army, and also he worked previously in a presidential administration as a national security advisor. So he has that understanding, and I think that he is the right person to be able to give the right advice to the president on national security, which, if you just saw Joe Biden's incredible decision to allow Ukraine to fire our ATACMS missiles that we give to them out of the M270 multiple launch rocket system into the sovereign nation of Russia. That's a big decision. That's a huge national security decision. And so President Trump has to be ready to deal with that the minute he comes into office. Let's look at some of the others that we have up here. The ambassador to Israel. I will tell you right now, I don't know how many times Governor Mike Huckabee has been to Israel, but they love him over there. He loves them. He understands what's going on the ground. The left is going crazy because he doesn't believe in the two-state solution. Well, show me in history where there ever has been a kingdom called Palestine or a country or a state called Palestine. Never has been. We're talking about people that are just Arabs. There is no separate and distinctive language. There's no separate and distinctive culture, currency, or anything. And as a matter of fact, the whole word Palestine came into being because of what happened as retribution for the Simon Bar Kokhba revolt of the Jewish people against the Roman emperor and empire during the time of Hadrian, 132 to 135 AD. Emperor Hadrian decided that he wanted to destroy and get rid of Judaism because he felt that that was the basis for this revolt. So he changed the name of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, and he changed the region that was known as Judea to Syriac Palestina, Palaestinia. The root word of Palestina is Philistia. Yes, Goliath, the Philistines. But when you do your study and understand that the ancient Philistines, they traced themselves back to Greece and to the Greek islands. They were seafaring people. Had nothing to do with Arabs, the indigenous people there. But all of a sudden, the great propaganda and marketing tool that Yasser Arafat used to take a certain region and tie it to a people. Now, all of a sudden, folks are saying that, we need to free Palestine. If you want to free Palestine, you give it back to the Jewish people because it was taken away from them all of those years ago by Emperor Hadrian after 135 AD as punishment for revolting against the Roman Empire. And furthermore, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Houthis, these are all non-state, non-uniform belligerents on the battlefield. They're putting civilians at risk. And these terrorist organizations are attacking a sovereign nation state, which is the state of Israel, that we recognize. And again, coming back to understanding national security and defense, one of the most important things we got to do is go back and bankrupt Iran like we did before during the Trump administration. And therefore, you won't hear about the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad. And furthermore, Iran will not be able to send drones to Russia, and they will not be able to ship their oil and gas resources to China and to others. Let's look at some of the other choices here in the other parts of the cabinet. Solicitor General John Sauer, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, FCC Chair Brendan Carr, Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Wilkoff. It's going to be very important that we restart the Abraham Accords, and maybe we expand the Abraham Accords. People want peace, but then also you have to have a credible nation. You have to have economic strength. You have to have your energy strength, so you're not showing dependence upon certain nations that want to see you undermined. And then you also have to have that credible foreign policy. And you have to have a very astute and sound and foundation by which people understand that your word is your word and your bond is your bond. So I think that right now what we're looking at is a very solid team being put together. But the big thing that I'm impressed about that we did not see with Trump 45 after he won that election in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, they were not ready to make these type of selections. Now they are. And I think that that is the big improvement that we have seen with Donald Trump 47. Because I remember when he was having Mitt Romney come up to Bedminster, New Jersey, to interview him for being Secretary of State. that was just a sideshow. That was just gimmicks. The left is so upset about these choices that President Trump has made, but I don't think you're going to see any bald head guys with a mustache running around in a dress being part of this administration. I don't think you're going to see someone like a Rick Levine. I know he goes by this thing, Rachel, but this very gender confused individual that's running around talking about health policy in the United States of America. So before you start throwing stones at the Trump administration and his selections, just think about some of the weirdos and some of the knuckleheads that we have seen as part of this Biden-Harris administration. I think now we see someone that is very serious. He knows what lies before him, and he knows he's got to get the job done. So I would say that, hopefully the Senate, they will get these confirmations done. If they have some issue with the nominee, then get with the president offline and talk about those issues. But let's get this show on the road because the American people are expecting to see some things change. So that's my assessment of what is going on with the Trump cabinet and the Trump special assignments that he has put out there. And I think that we have a good team that's going to go forward and put America first once again. And who would not want to see America first? Because as Ricky Bobby, the great philosopher, said, if you ain't first, you're last. God bless you all. And thanks for joining us for this episode of the Live Free TV.